Welcome back, guys. Welcome to All for United Monday night show. Anything goes. Tonight I've got John, James, and Ben's just in time turned up. It's been a while. Just fashionably late there, as I can see. He's got a nice brown jacket on. That's probably the reason he was a little late, Ben, I'm sure. But nice to see you, mate. It's been a while since I've spoken to you.
Yeah, it's been really busy, mate. To be honest, with that Queen's funeral and stuff, and then I went away. I've been away at work, so.
Yeah,
but it's been good.
Understandable, mate. Well, you've come back at the right time to talk about a pretty hot topic, which none of us wanted to talk about. I think we wanted to talk about an opposite result, but there we go. We've got a slight negative to talk about tonight, but I'm sure there'll be plenty to say. So, without further ado, I've got John's first topic. I think, John, you wanted to talk about some positives actually, despite the fact that there's largely some negatives in that last game. Yeah. I'll let you with your topic, mate, and we'll get chatting about it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was just obviously yesterday was embarrassment, particularly in the first half. Second time this season we've been 4-0 down at half time, and I'm sure we'll go into more detail about it. But I try and take positives where possible, and I want to focus on the forward line and particularly Martial making a return. Yes, and yes, it was lost goals. City did take the foot off the gas, but he did score a couple of goals, which, even though it made no difference on the scoreline, it did, on the actual result, it will hopefully give Martial a bit of confidence. And I think it's made me think about how the front three were playing. Anthony obviously scored a brilliant goal as well. Rashford, obviously, had scraps to feed off, but his performance wasn't great. I thought Sancho was awful yesterday with many other players, but I just think going forwards about having a discussion about what our front line should be, and obviously Martial has been injured and all that, but if he can get into some kind of form and stay injury free, what our front three should be. And I personally think that Martial, Ronaldo, as we know, is off the pace at the moment. I personally think Martial is perhaps the best player to play in that position if he is fit and he can stay consistent. And obviously Anthony's the other player we ought to play, and that maybe leaves a decision about whether to play Rashford or Sancho on the left wing. But yeah, that's what I wanted to bring to the discussion tonight.
I think it's a really good topic. I'm sure that the guys have got a lot more to say again as well in the comments. Please put your suggestions in there as well. But I mean, we aren't exactly blessed with on form strikers at the minute to sort of really swap and change things. But my topic later on towards the end of the hour really is just sort of about the Ronaldo situation, but I'll drift past that a little bit. But I mean, I think you're right about Sancho. I said towards the end of the season last season that I felt like this season was his big opportunity for me. You have to show kind of what that price tag, why we sort of got him for that price really. And I think with the partnership that he had with Haaland back at Dortmund, he showed a world-class performer in there, and we just haven't really seen that at United yet. So huge disappointment in Sancho for me as well, John. And but I don't think it was a game for him. I think we spoke about it the other night. I think it was last Monday, and certainly last Wednesday in the preview show, in terms of kind of what Ten Hag should go with attacking City. Is our front three, even our best front three, is it the right front three for a City lineup against City? And I don't think it was. Maybe playing slightly defensively in terms of maybe reducing the attack down to maybe one up front or two up front at least, and reducing it and packing in midfield would have been a bit more sensible. But I think Martial coming back in, I thought his cameo at Liverpool before obviously he picked up another knock was fantastic. I felt like yesterday he was sharp, he seemed keen, and that's what we want to see, having that extra option coming in and seeing that we've got a player that could maybe turn the season around for us. could be great. I think we put a lot of faith in Martial, didn't we? Off the back of the pre-season as well. So it could be a really good year for him, to be quite honest. Sancho's got to do more. Obviously, Anthony picks up with a goal, but has he got to do more with the ball and maybe even off the ball in terms of creating things for his team? It was a goal out of nowhere, really, but it was kind of game was dead and buried, and he didn't do much leading up to that. Prior to that, so I don't know. It's tough. It's tough, John. I mean, does Alanga get another shout? We haven't really got a massive amount of options at the minute. I'm not sure what the rest of the guys think. James, do you want to give your view on the front three?
Well, first of all, it was good to see Martial get a couple of goals, right? John's right to bring up the positives of a performance that was basically covered almost all in negatives. And it was good to see Martial come back and a really well taken penalty and a poacher's goal. Like, people may look at it and think, oh, it's not a very good goal, but there's many people in our team that don't gamble on that ball being there. So it was really nice to see him do that. On the other two, obviously, great finish from Anthony, but I don't know if you saw it. I just wanted to bring something up. Paul Scholes put up an Instagram post this morning, and it was Beckham and Giggs, and it had the caption, "Who remembers when wingers used to help out their defenders?" That was the caption. And it got me thinking yesterday. I was like, obviously, Sancho and Anthony weren't very effective going forwards. I know Anthony got a goal, but apart from that, didn't really do much. But they were probably even less effective in helping out Dalot, Malacia and Shaw. And that's a big problem at the moment, because although we've got very good individual defenders in the last 4 games prior to City, Dalot, Malacia, Varane and Martinez have been playing very well. You attack as a team and you defend as a team. And at the end of the day, you've got 11 players on that pitch that when you're under siege from a very good Manchester City team, one of the best teams ever to play in the Premier League, in my opinion, you need to work very hard to keep them out. And they scored 6 goals yesterday, and it was far too easy, if I'm brutally honest. Going forward, I think Martial is a great option at number 9. I think he showed that in pre-season. He showed it in the cameo at Liverpool. He holds the ball up very well. The main issue with Martial is, I think John mentioned it, he used the word if he can do this. Well, we've had 7 seasons of Anthony Martial, and there's probably an argument that he's had a good season and a half, maybe 2 seasons. There's an argument for the best moment in his Manchester United career being 10 minutes into his debut against Liverpool, and he's not really kicked on from then. He had a Ballon d'Or clause in his contract. We want to see more from Martial because we all know the talent he's got. You can see it on a football pitch. The talent is there to go and be a 15, 20 goal a season striker for Manchester United, even more. But he just needs a run in the team. It seems like his confidence can be easily knocked, but at the same time, it can flow as well. So if he gets a run and if he goes a couple of games in a row scoring, then he's going to be a great option for a number 9 for Manchester United. And then that does leave the whole Rashford-Sancho thing. And on Sancho, he wasn't good yesterday. And it was quite ironic almost that you had the 2 City youngsters that came through at a similar time on opposing teams. You had Jadon Sancho on one team and you had Phil Foden on the other team. And what polar opposite performances. I mean, Foden, I know people have that discussion when it comes to England about Foden or Sancho, and they tend to throw Saka in there. But Foden was streets ahead yesterday in every area of the game. And Sancho, whilst he has all the talent, I think this season we've kind of been deceived a little bit because he scored big goals in big moments, right? So people think he's played really well all season, when actually, when you analyse his performances, I've kind of been a bit iffy with Jadon Sancho. I think he shirks a few tackles. He doesn't take on his man. And I know that's not his game. It's more of a pass and move thing. But I think he's another player that's very, very talented, but I just think he could give more. And he wasn't the best yesterday, but I do still think he gets in our best forward front 3 with Anthony and Martial when he's fit. And as I'm sure we'll come on to later, that leaves out Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really good assessment, James, to be fair. And a few people agree with you. Jarvis agreeing with you there. Great point. Totally agree. Watch Foden and Grealish. There's no luxury players in the City's machinery. And I think that's kind of says it there. Hard working on both ends. I think that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I think it was it Haaland's hat-trick goal? And I can't remember who made the break with it. It was Alvarez who delivered it. It might have been, was it Cancelo? there was a run from the midfield that De Bruyne picked out, and the guy must have been 30 yards unopposed, straight across to the left before he whipped the ball in, and it was just even at that point there where they were completely controlling the game, they were already sort of 4 goals up, still making breaks off the ball, still creating things for each other, and we just look flat from beginning to end. There's no doubt that Sancho and Anthony and Rashford and Martial are players that can get into good teams and do things, at the highest level. There's no doubt about that. You don't just suddenly come from teams that they've been at performing at the level they were at and suddenly just go bad overnight. So there's obviously something in terms of the way that we're playing and the system that we're putting together that's obviously not playing to their strengths. And for me, it just looks flat. I watched the Sunday show last night, and Ben, I don't know if you managed to see that as well, but the guys got talking about the formation and how it kind of just suits Bruno, and that was quite interesting, really. I'm not necessarily blaming Bruno, but there's obviously a system that we're playing that doesn't seem to be suiting a lot of the other players. And it's getting frustrating that we've got such attacking talent, yet we don't seem to be creating really many chances. But what's kind of your view on the attacking line, Ben, on in terms of what John's been speaking about?
I think the problem I've got, Reece, and I had a chat with my friend about this week when I was on nights, is I think Foden and Sancho are the perfect analogy, because you've got a player who was brought into a culture that was ready-made to facilitate him progressively. And then you get Sancho, who had basically that progressive development phase at Dortmund in a settled structure. He's then come to us where that's not in place whatsoever. And then you then fast forward to now where Erik Ten Hag's almost... it's hard really, because my friend, he was actually quite personal, because we were trying to relate it to things in the military, and I said, Erik Ten Hag's basically been asked to redevelop Buckingham Palace, but rather than doing 5 years, he's been asked to do it in a week. And you see that with the players, because Sancho, for me, is more of a sort of... he's a system-based player than in terms of that intricacy, that 1-2 pass and move, than he is like a Rashford, where he's all out winger straight down the flank like Giggs used to, or Kanchelskis. But the problem you've then got is Ten Hag doesn't have players around him who he wants that play that similar way. So you've got a mismatch of players that he's trying to sort of accommodate until he gets all of his soldiers in a line at the minute, because he's only been able to buy so many players that he feels that he can get in players in areas that are of sheer significance to give something to the team for some solidity, which then means you then get this up and down performance from players. For me, yesterday collectively was that was a performance that I was expecting to see this season anyway, because it's never going to be a constant upward curve. There's going to be that where we plateau, fall off, and then go up again on the other side of the mountain, because Ten Hag's trying to facilitate what he wants from the players all round, see what players actually can do it fundamentally across the season, and then also try and find players who he can bring in that are going to cover the players that are lacking in areas that he needs to improve in. The whole team was poor, to be fair. You couldn't really single out anybody, because they all weren't at it from minute one to minute end. Yes, the positive you can look at in the sense that I would have said if we'd have played that game last season, we wouldn't have scored 3 goals. We would have just capitulated even more, because there was just no togetherness in the team whatsoever. There was no want to sort of keep going forward, even if we were playing horrendously, which we were yesterday. Yes, I know some of the goals you can say were fortunate, but you've got to be in those positions to get the fortune. And those were the things that we wouldn't have done last season. So we'd have lost that game probably 6, 7, 8-0, let alone get 3 goals. Do
you think on the Anthony situation? I'm not necessarily blaming Anthony at all. This isn't the reason for me asking. Obviously, he scored yesterday, but do you think, in terms of where we're currently at in terms of developing this team, that going for Anthony as big as he did was the right thing to do, and maybe other positions were probably a little wiser? Because it's not just a kind of
I get
potential
why.
Di Maria situation or a Memphis Depay situation we've got on his hands, where the player might not even have an opportunity to sort of build to a system before he maybe loses a lot of form.
I get why he signed him, and I supported the manager because at the end of the day, that's who he wanted, so I'll support him anyway. But also, he knows what the manager wants from him. I think the problem you have is people don't look at the whole square; they look at one part of the square. So they'll look at that one part of the square of Anthony's come for X amount. He's played 2 games, I think it is, since he arrived. So now he should be fully up to speed. But they don't factor in the other 3 sides of the square, that he's come into a system where not everybody knows that system to the letter like he does. He's playing with a player that he's not got a relationship with yet. Yes, they speak the same language, which makes it far, far easier for him. But he's also coming into a team that doesn't know what Ten Hag wants from them from the minute dot, whereas he does. So you've got players in transition, just understanding what the manager wants. He's already got that sort of experience under his belt, and he's gone through that procedure to get to where he was in terms of knowing what the manager wants from him. But there's also going to be that lag with him because he's coming to a team that ultimately he doesn't know many players apart from obviously Martinez, and I think he knows Ericsson, and obviously he's played against Malacia. So you're going to have to give him some chance to build rapport. But also you've got to factor in his age, that there's going to be that dip, coupled with the fact that he's obviously new to the Premier League. So I think I understood why the manager wanted him. I think he will add a lot to the team because he understands that right wing role better than anybody that you could probably buy, in given that he obviously knows the manager so well. The manager trusts him explicitly. I think he'll add lots to the team once we get to where we need to be. But I think for me, I'm every time I watch us play, I just instantly remove all emotion I have for the team, because if you don't, you'll end up just castrating the team within the first 10 minutes, because players will instantly jump on players and not really. You have to look at the whole situation for me, because otherwise you get so many then agendas get brought up, and then that's where you get unnecessary pressure put on the manager when there doesn't need to be, because you have to accept this path's not going to be fully tarmacked. There's going to be a point where it's still getting renovated. We haven't got to that fully tarmac stage yet, and you have to allow that process to take its sort of duration. If you don't allow that, then every player is going to fail, because you've instantly put them on a negative. It was like the selection 11, sorry, Reece, in that I understood why he went with them, because the last game that they played collectively very well as an 11. So I got why he picked the same 11. But then you sort of have to let the manager make those judgment calls. If they don't work out, which he obviously didn't do yesterday, but I don't think that was just solely on the manager and the 11 he picks. I just don't think the team played well, full stop.
Is that not just a little bit naive and a little bit old school? I mean, John, I'll come to you on this one. Ben, we'll come back to your topic's next, really sort of kind of features nicely onto your topic. But do you think that's a little naive from Ten Hag, though, in terms of what I agree with what Ben was saying, but you know, we've seen a manager who's kind of been quite old school in his system, in terms of, you know, if you train right, if you play well, you play the next game, and all the kind of old school mentalities, really, which is quite nice to see. But then when it doesn't necessarily work, or you're going against a team as well as Man City were yesterday, was it an opportunity to maybe think about making some changes and being a little bit more cagey? You know, was that like an issue? You know, the front line, obviously, like I say, playing with 3 attacking players might not have been the best option. Well, what's your general thoughts on that?
I think I would agree, and I can understand, like, you can see why he picked the same team, because that was the team that played against Arsenal. But you've got to factor in, obviously, and was, you know, Foden at the funeral and all that. We haven't played a league game for a month, have we? You know, and I know and that's a long period to go without playing. And I just think that he did show a bit of naivety, perhaps. And I personally think when I was watching the game, it was clear we'd been outrunning midfield, and you could see that City were dominating the ball, and you needed, you know, I reckon someone like maybe someone like Mourinho might have been bold enough to make a change after half an hour. You know, get someone like Casemiro on and take one of your midfielders off just so you can get control in the midfield. And I think it was quite naive of him because you could tell that City were going to get a second the way they were playing. So you might as well make the change while you're 1-0 down, at the worst 2-0 down. And on the third and fourth goals in particular, I think they were the most shocking ones because we were actually attacking. That meant that they broke on us, and there was no midfield apart from Eriksen, and I think it was very naive of him. But it's also, like we touched on, it was also naive the team. Like Dallo had a nightmare at right back. All City's goals, apart from the third one, came from their left-hand side. Anthony wasn't supporting, Dallo. Sancho wasn't supporting him last year, and yes, they had bad games, Malassi and Dallo, but they weren't being supported by by the wingers, and I didn't feel sorry for them because we weren't defending as a team, and it meant our back four were exposed now. And yes, the back four could have done better on the goals as well, but I just think that hopefully he does learn from it going forwards because it can't happen again. And he needs to sharpen up. I think Ten Hag is second time we've been 4-0 down in 9 games, whatever we played. But I think hopefully we do learn from it. And I trust him. I think he's our best manager for the future, but we need to back him. And
No, I do agree. I think, and we'll come to Ben's topic in a second, which is kind of feeding into what I'm about to say. But obviously, there is a long way to go with this, and I think he just needs to understand that himself sometimes and realise that, unfortunately, we probably got a little carried away after the last few results, and obviously up against City, we should have probably been a little bit more cagey, which, from a fan's point of view, from our point of view, that probably wasn't something we wanted to see, but staying in the game rather than being out of the game after 45 would have been a lot better situation to be in. So Ben, we'll come on to you, mate, which is kind of what we just said there and about the whole process of everything and what we need to do as fans and generally as the club with Ten Hag and this team. So do you want to kind of talk about your topic, mate, and then we'll...
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I've tried to sort of look at the whole sort of picture of what I would sort of want to think sees the journey that's ahead of him and how he thinks that's going to pan out, but then also how we as fans have to also see that picture and not just see it in our own interpretation. Because I mean, I don't know about you, Reece, or the guys on the panel. I would rather, if I'm doing something, I would rather make catastrophic mistakes so that I then have learned from them and I then far better moving forward when it matters, than almost be the grey man where you trudge through and everyone just thinks, oh, it's not actually too bad under Ten Hag. And then we get to a point where we then have to have an absolute fall off a cliff because things that he would have wanted to have seen, as harsh as it may sound, glaringly obvious like yesterday, to see then the character in the team, but also what deficiencies he needs to work on, then you have just the odd close defeat, or it's a 1-0, but City say have 90% of the possession. Yes, that's still bad, but it doesn't paint as big a picture of what needs to be worked on within the team. And for me, I think we have to look at everything objectively. He's only been in the job a short time. You've in essence had yesterday. I mean, I said to a friend of mine that you had yesterday where one journey started and one journey's at its peak. You can't compare the two if you're being fair, because to do so would just be completely irrational. But the way some people speak is as if Ten Hag's been in the job the same length of time as Pep and he's been able to do the same things. He hasn't. He's got players who fundamentally he may not want, but he's in a position where he can't get rid of them. So he's got to make do with them as best he can. within a system that still gives the players an overview of what he's expecting from them, but allows a degree of sort of what's the word, where you can sort of account for people's deficiencies, because he's not got a player in a position that he knows he's at 100% in my system because of how I want him to play. And I think you have to let that journey take its path, because if we don't, and we kill this manager, who I think is for me, he's the best appointment we've made since Fergie. I'm not saying he's going to go on and be Fergie, but in terms of the manager, how he carries himself, how he conducts himself, what he wants from a team, the fact that he's got a clear identity in everything he does, whether it be from how he wants the players to play, how he wants to conduct themselves, that team ethos that he wants within the dressing room, and how that's carried across every single player, and every single player has a responsibility, but then an accountability on themselves. And I think you saw that in those 4 games before the international break, and obviously the Queen's funeral, where you saw that togetherness, which we wouldn't have seen last season, in terms of how we played individually, in positions, but collectively. Yes, yesterday's result, you can either look at it as it's a one-off in isolation. We had a month off because of obviously things that happen externally to what the players can control. So you are going to have to think there's probably going to be a dip. Yes, you're not expecting that dip to be as catastrophic, but sometimes it's better to cut the digit off than just have it rot. Because I think mentally the players are probably in a better position now to deal with how that was yesterday with the manager and how he'll go all about addressing it than if this happened last season. Because I think last season we'd have just seen a continuation of that morale being drained after yesterday's result. We've got a lot of games this month, which you can say is a bad thing. I look at it as a good thing, because it gives you the opportunity to right your wrongs. It gives you an opportunity to show the manager that how I played was a one-off. Yes, it shouldn't happen, but it does. We're human beings. I think it'll show him more about what the players are in terms of who they are as people, because you only see someone's true colours in adversity, because it's easy to mask how you're feeling when everything's rosy. I mean, the Ronaldo thing, that'll just get dragged up because of the result. And for me, I also don't think the manager's of that mindset where he'll let it enter his ether. I think he'll just bat it off, because ultimately it's his train set, and he's been clear from day one. You know, I respect the player, but ultimately it's if I don't see him being of use fundamentally moving forward, that's not being distasteful to Cristiano in any way. It's just the facts. He sees his team playing with these front 3 more than he does Ronaldo. And you have to support that. If you don't allow that to progress as fans, then there's no point in supporting him in the first instance. I actually think overall over the games we've played. So is it 5 games we've played now, or is it 7 games? Sorry.
Oh, I can.
Oh, is it 6? Is it 6 games? Because we played the top 6. We've played 3 of the top 6, haven't we? 7 games. Sorry, 7 games, James. Yeah, because we've played the most out of the top 6 teams in our first few games than any other supposed top 6 team. And you know, we've had these horrendous moments in games, yet we're still above Liverpool, where we're in this huge transition period with a manager who's got lots on his plate, lots on his agenda to cover, but we're still above them. We've played good football in those 4 games. Yes, I know it wasn't scintillating, and it's probably nowhere near where he expects the team to be, but I also think there's a sense of realism with Ten Hag, in that he'll look at the adversity in those first 2 games where we were horrific, and then see the upward curve that he managed to get for those 4 games. You've got the same again yesterday. They've got a game on Thursday. It's in Cyprus, isn't it? The Nicosia, is it in Cyprus, the game? Yeah. So they've got a chance to right the wrongs. And for me, Reece, I said this to a friend of mine yesterday, that people throw the word process out so sort of haphazardly, like deeming players world class. I think it's been so diluted, that word, but you have to look at the word. The word's just a heading. You've got to look at everything beneath the word process. It's not just the process of what he wants the players to do. It's everything: recruitment, how he wants the players to go about doing that, the players he wants to bring in, how they train, do they understand what he's asking of them? Are they prepared to change their ways in learning these new techniques? Where I read reports that he's from some of the players where he's incredibly sort of driven on this one-to-one analysis, understanding where you've gone wrong. So you have to buy into that, but you have to let that run its course. We can't just look at what's happened and judge Eric Ten Hag on his reign on these 7 games, because if you do, then what do you do? Who do you go to? Go to Poch? Who said that? Well, is that going to be any better? I think this manager is better than Poch, in my view.
Yeah, well, I do as well. I'll get my view on it in a sec. But obviously, James, what do you think? Do you agree with Ben with that? And obviously, what's your thoughts on this kind of this process, if you like? Are you bought on it, or generally, what's your feelings on it, mate?
I agree with a lot of what Ben said, to be honest. Patience is needed. The main thing that I see, though, unfortunately, is we live in 2022 and football is a mirror of society in 2022. And basically, we live wanting everything now. If you want food, you go on Just Eat or Deliveroo and order food. You don't cook. I work in the fitness industry. If people want a 6-pack, they want it in 12 minutes. They don't want it in 6 months. People want things immediately, whether that comes with work or not. So, and football's no different. Football fans are definitely no different. All you have to do is scroll across social media and you will see that football fans wanted instant success from Ten Hag, instant free-flowing football from Ten Hag, and probably silverware from Ten Hag. And as Ben rightly said, it's a process, and expecting all those things is, frankly, a little bit crazy, because things are going to take time. It's not just getting them to play his style, it's getting them to buy into his attitude. We were talking about selection before. I actually think he made the right selection, but if you listen to what he said afterwards in the game, he was like, well, the application wasn't there, was it? We didn't go and impose ourselves on the game. So it's not just players, it's not just tactics, it's attitude, it's mentality, it's the recruitment, it's everything around the club that needs to change. And we are not the club that we were when we were all growing up and watching. And we're a very different proposition now, and it's going to take quite a bit of time to get back there. I agree with Ben that he's the best manager we've had, or the best fit for Manchester United as a manager we've had. Obviously, Jose Mourinho is a fantastic manager and you can't knock his credentials. But in terms of a Manchester United manager at this point in his career, I think Ten Hag is an excellent choice, and I think he needs to be backed. I think he was given a 4-year contract, and as far as I'm aware, there was nothing written in that contract that said he needed to win the Premier League in his first season, or play amazing football in his first season, or get top 4, or win a cup, or do anything like that in his first season. And I think that pressure is put on by the fan base, and I don't think it helps. I don't know if any of you guys were at the Brighton game, first game of the season, but basically, obviously, the instruction was to play the ball out from the back like it has been basically all season. And I would say the Old Trafford fan base lasted about 10 minutes of believing in the Ten Hag system before they started booing and jeering at De Gea not playing the long ball at them, just recycling it along the back 4. And for me, that just shows like you spent all of last season clambering for a manager who was obviously given the players this instruction to play a particular way. There's no pass on, which they've been told to do. So they've been told to recycle possession until there is a route through to midfield or whatever. And you're booing and jeering, which then puts pressure on De Gea, Maguire, Martinez, Varane, whoever it was, to then play the ball long. And you're asking, that pressure is causing the players to go against what the manager wants. And I just think peer pressure, fan pressure, all that stuff has a big effect on how the team plays. I just don't think it helps. So I think people need to take a step back. Like Ben said, you need to realise that yesterday's game in particular is a game between a team at the beginning of their process and a team that has basically completed the video game, mate. Not only have they gone through their process, they've basically completed it to the best ability possible. they do everything almost perfect on and off the pitch. And I hate to say that, but they're basically a role model of how you run a football club and how you run a business at this moment in time. They're an excellent model to try and emulate. So we are so far apart. And I saw a lot of what I would say like false sense of security before the game from fans, that we were going in with this optimism. And a lot weren't even predicting draws. They were predicting wins. And I think people just kind of forgot that it was a team that were very much on the start of their journey and in a learning process against a team that basically know their roles down to an individual. And it showed yesterday. So yes, we need to be patient with Ten Hag. I have faith that some of the fan base will be patient with Ten Hag. I have faith that the board will be patient with Ten Hag. I don't really have faith that all of the fan base will be patient with Ten Hag. And that's my one wish, that I kind of hope that they would.
Yeah, it's a really good point, James, and feeding on from Ben, really. John, I'll get your view on it before I have my final say on it, just to get around. But yeah, John, do you sort of agree with James there in terms of his assessment of what Ben said?
Yeah, I agree with both what they said. I think it will take time with Ten Hag. Ben mentioned about, Pep, in his first season at City, he had a few embarrassing results, didn't he? Klopp in his first couple of years at Liverpool did as well, and look at what they managed to achieve. And I think it does take time, and I'm not surprised. I think the saddest thing about yesterday is that we're not surprised by what happened, and if someone said City will score 6 bashes today, we wouldn't have been like, oh, can't believe it, but I think James makes a good point about City being at, I wouldn't say the end of their process, but almost complete, because they've added Haaland now, who's a superstar, which Tyler mentioned. He's probably the first real superstar that they've had now, putting, magic on top of what's already been built up. And I just think with Ten Hag, these things will happen. You got to take the rough with the smooth. There will be games where we do get battered in. We've had City, we've had Brentford. But equally, there'll be games which we win, which we don't expect to win. Like we've already beaten Liverpool and Arsenal, for example. I do think this season we could be the most interesting team to watch in regards to you just don't know what's going to happen. United will lose games which we don't expect to lose, and we'll win games which we don't expect to win. And I think come the end of the season, I have faith that we will continue to build. I think overall we will in the end have a good season, but there'll be maybe a couple more days like yesterday to come. But I do think as we build up towards the World Cup and then second half of the season, the team will get better. We'll get more used to Ten Hag's style, and it does take time for a team to get used to a manager's style. It took City a season under Pep. It took Liverpool 2 to 3 years, so you gotta be patient, and but obviously keep getting results, and hopefully by the end of the season we'll get in the Champions League, and hopefully we might win a trophy or something. But yeah, you gotta be patient.
No, definitely. I think in terms of what you've all said, I'm absolutely behind every single one of you. I think in terms of yesterday, John, I totally agree with that. I think what it felt like was we've known that City have been pulling away over the years, gradually, sort of, if you look at it, kind of like a car pulling away on the motorway. And I think just now that they're just getting out of sight. After yesterday, I think that was a realisation that they'd just kind of gone around that bend, and we couldn't really see the back of them anymore, really. And that was what was quite sad about it, that we're in that situation where obviously we're in this transition, we're in this rebuild, but obviously we've been in that situation now for a long time. In terms of obviously Ten Hag, he's got, it's a new thing that he's coming to a new club that he's having to instill his philosophy on, and we've got to be patient with that. But in terms of everything that's come before Ten Hag and where we're still currently at against one of our biggest rivals, it was sad to see, wasn't it, that we, at least to see a little bit of fight, maybe still lose the game, but see a little bit of fight where we would sort of competing at times in the game with them would have been nice. But it was a consolation towards the end. You can look at it as a positive that we won the second half, but I don't look at it that way. Obviously, Pep kind of mastered the art of shithousery, I thought, yesterday by swapping half the team off. I thought, even that was like salt in the wound, really, to be quite honest, to bring the players that he brought on. But yeah, I totally agree with all of you. I think in terms of your topic, Ben, I'm totally fully behind Ten Hag and what he's doing. I think it is a process. I think in terms of where my slight criticism with him, and it's a very small one, is just he needs to maybe play the games and swap and change his teams to suit the opponent a little bit and learn from that. I think yesterday was a little bit of a little naive in terms of the selection that he put out, if I'm honest. And then obviously when he was hawking off sort of McTominay 48 minutes in, it kind of showed that he was maybe he had a change of heart with the Casemiro kind of move and stuff like that. And it's just, then it exposes you a little bit in terms of some of the mistakes that maybe you've made as a manager in terms of selection. But other than that, I think obviously, like I say, it's a long way to go. He is the best choice that we've got. I think he's the best manager that we could have hoped for. And he's obviously got a very good philosophy that we all want to really buy into, and hopefully we'll see before the end of the season. But I think for next season is where it's really going to hopefully turn a bit of a corner for us, isn't it? James, coming to you, mate, obviously in terms of your topic, and you want to talk a little bit about kind of what I've just mentioned, and I think the other guys touched on it as well, in terms of this period under the Glazers and this kind of decline where we've seen other teams grow around us and perhaps we possibly haven't, and maybe that was a bit of a kind of a crescendo point yesterday where we saw that take place. What do you want to kind of talk about your topic, mate? And
Yeah, well, it's obviously really popular to talk about at the moment. Yeah, Glazers are trending for a while now, hasn't it? But realistically, yesterday just brought on a discussion that needs to be had yet again. It was a culmination of the last 17 years on and off the pitch, and it should have been no surprise to anyone, frankly. And I see quite a lot of pundits come out and say you can't blame this on the Glazers, they've spent this much money, and it's just a complete lack of education, and it's very, very dangerous to have that put out there in the media. And if you go back to 2005 and you look at the status of Manchester United at the time, and you look at the fact that they were challenging for Premier Leagues, they had one of the best stadiums in the country, they had one of the best training facilities in the country, they were looking at expanding the stadium. There was plenty of things that were looking good for Manchester United, and their debt was zero at that point. No debt on the club whatsoever. You go 6 years prior to that, we'd obviously won the treble while Manchester City were in League 2 or League 1, Division 2 back then. You fast forward 17 years and Man City are probably looking like winning their third league title in a row, and Manchester United are looking like struggling at the beginning of another process. I know we used that word before. So what's really gone wrong? Why are people so unhappy with the Glazers? Why is it important in what's going on, basically? And I'll use a couple of analogies. Like if you own like a small corner shop, you could hire the best salespeople in the world. Let's call them your signings. You could go sign your Ronaldos, your Messis, whoever. If you don't stock that shop properly, if you don't get stock in that people want to buy, if you don't open at the right hours where people come, if you're not in the right location, none of that, like all of that has an effect. You can put the best salesman or the best salesperson in the world, and they won't be able to sell and make a profit on the items that you have. And unfortunately, since 2005, the wrong people have been in charge. If you look at just the debt, just the interest on the debt and dividends alone, it's £1 billion. £1 billion, that's 850 million, which is the interest on the debt, and 150 million pounds that has been taken out in dividends since 2005. Now, if that doesn't scream at you, then you don't really understand business, economics, or football, because that's £1 billion that could have been used to get us closer to Manchester City. Now, I'm not saying that there hasn't been a mismanagement of funds. We all know that. There was a clear underinvestment from 2005 to 2013 because we were relying on the genius of Sir Alex Ferguson and David Gill. We managed to win league titles in that time. We managed to win a Champions League in that time, domestic cups. So they were covering they were papering over the cracks. Then you fast forward past 2013 and you went from an underinvestment to a real waste of money, mismanagement of money. signing world beaters, supposed world beaters for astronomical fees, handing out astronomical wages to the likes of Alexis Sanchez, for example, not being able to move on players, selling 7 players for £10 million or more in the past 9 years is not good enough. We have a habit of bringing in players for a lot of money and not being able to move them on because they're on ridiculous contracts, which nobody wants to pay. And people think this whole Glazers out thing is a result of our results being poor. And I'd just like to reiterate that I was in a protest in 2010 when the green and gold movement started. And we just won back-to-back leagues and we won the Champions League a couple of years before. This has zero to do with results. It may have an end effect on the pitch, but it's nothing to do with the results on the football pitch. That is not why I'm Glazers out. I'm not Glazers out because we didn't have an effective summer transfer window and we left deals too late and Murta and Arnold were doing this abroad and we should have got De Jong and we shouldn't. That's nothing to do with the systemic problem at the football club. And just to finish off, I'll use the last analogy, right? So I've said this to people before, and it's a bit of a strange one, so bear with me. But if someone is diagnosed with cancer in 2005, right, and it doesn't really show signs of anything, it doesn't show any symptoms, and they live a happy life for the next 8 years. And then come 2013, it starts to show symptoms. You start to get poorly, things starts to go downhill. And then in 2022, you can call it the demise of the football club, you can call it whatever, but obviously end of the situation. So was the demise of the football club, was the cancer, was that terminal in 2013 when you started getting the symptoms and showing the symptoms of failure? Or was it terminal in 2005 at your time of diagnosis when the actual onset of the problem occurred? And that's the issue. Too many people are looking at the fact that Sir Alex Ferguson was a genius, the greatest manager to ever have existed inside or outside of Manchester United Football Club. And he covered over the cracks for a long time. And unfortunately, people just don't realise how big this problem is. And a body rots from the head, and the Glazers is a big problem. And I don't care what the results happen this season, how we get behind Ten Hag, like whatever happens, Glazers out needs to continue. It's not a fad. It is a big problem at the football club. And it should be no shock that yesterday happened, because we have been going in completely the wrong direction, in my opinion, for the past 17 years.
Yeah, I mean, James, I can't disagree. I mean, I could listen to you for the next 15 minutes talk about it, and I'd completely agree with you. I think, and I'm sure John and Ben are the same. I mean, I'll come to you, then I'll come to John. But I mean, do you agree with James? Is this the reason we're kind of in this situation, irrespective of obviously results? You know, the message out there is Glazers out, and I think it's not because of the kind of recent form or anything like that. I think it's obviously there's been a decline in lots of different areas within the club that have been a reason of these owners being at the helm. So I mean, do you agree with a lot of what James said? I think it's hard to disagree, isn't it? To be fair, but I mean, what's kind of your general views on?
No, I mean, I'm 100% with what James said, and he was spot on with everything. I mean, I mean, for me, to use an analogy, we are a twat with a shotgun. In that you just hope, because I've got a shotgun, I'm going to hit the target, because there's likelihood with the way the shots go out, I've got a good chance of hitting it, but it's never going to be on target all the time, rather than being that person who's on point, accurate as a sniper. In some ways, I think if we hadn't have had Fergie, as mad as that sounds, I think if Fergie had have just decided to take up horse racing in 2005 when they bought the club, and we didn't have Fergie, I actually don't think they would have been in. I think they'd have gone by now. I think because of who he was, what he had done, and that sort of aura that he had built, like this godfatherly status, like the film, I think they just saw that as the perfect storm of, we've got this person in charge who in all retrospect, we could give him chimps and he'd make a great team. And then we can almost just do what we like. And by the time the root comes to the surface, we've got our roots that dug into the football club. We're not going anywhere. I think James is right. I think Fergie, Fergie to some degree almost intimated a lot of the time. If you look at from 2008, after we won the Champions League, to when he retired 2013, he made so many subtle references about funds, but spun in a way where it wasn't in any way, shape, or form sort of being direct towards the ownership. In that,
do you
it
feel
was
like Fergie was quite loyal in that respect, that he didn't want to? Obviously, he was quite adamant that he
No
never
value in the market.
Yeah, he did bring things.
I think he was torn with the fact that his love for the club, and obviously the previous ownership of obviously Martin Edwards before they took over, his, to a degree, yes, loyalty to his ownership, because ultimately they are the ones who write the checks, and the fact that I also think because we were so successful under him, it's that old adage, you don't see the wood through the trees, because it's not as obvious to you actually what's just happened, because you're seeing continued success, and he was basically pulling rabbits out of the hat post 2008 when he was making teams that won the league, and you just thought, how on earth has that team won collectively? Yes, we had some stars in it, but collectively it wasn't anywhere near sort of pre or post 2008. Sorry, pre 2008. And that's why I think if you hadn't have had Fergie in charge, I don't think it would have been. I think they probably would have gone by now. But James is right. We've gone from sort of so far left field to so far right field in terms of spending zip for so many years to spending an obscene amount of money, but spending an obscene amount of money. Like you've gone from having nothing to winning the Euro Millions and being told you can go to Las Vegas casino and just do whatever you like. There's no plan. It's just, I've got money, I'm spending it. I've got my pockets are on fire because I have to spend this money now. And that's what we've been like. We've been like kids in sweetie shop, buying players because we think it's almost like we're playing a video game. Like, I actually think the people below our ownership have almost thought they're actually living Football Manager. Like with the players that we've signed. Because you look at the players that we've signed, yes, on paper, the players that we've signed, you would think, wow, they're the type of players that you want at the club. But if you actually dig down on the players we've signed and where they were in their careers, you would have never have signed them for those reasons. Schweinsteiger was a wonderful footballer, but he was a wonderful footballer at Bayern Munich. We didn't buy that Bastian Schweinsteiger. We bought the guy who sadly was on the other side of the cliff. So that's not a fault on him, because you're going to come to United. Because at the time when he came, we were Man United. So you're not going to say no. But he was just he was an example of why. And because we didn't see that, and nobody was prepared to say no or challenge it, you've got to the point now where you've got Eric Ten Hag, and he's got so many players from so many prior regimes, but then you're expecting him to win instantly whilst dealing with a mismatch of players. Because I mean, I made the reference to, and I don't know if you've seen the film. Have you ever seen the film Moneyball with Brad Pitt?
No, I don't think so. No.
So it's a true story where basically he takes how baseball. He basically hated the fact that the top teams in baseball monopolized the market for players, and they could just come to any small club and pinch their best player. So he basically looked at players in a different way in terms of, in essence, stats. But he created what you'd consider to be a mismatch of players, and they went on to do extreme things. But it worked in baseball because of what they were able to do in a singular job. You can't do that in football, and that's what we currently have now. But no, I agree completely with what James said. Until they go, you're never going to see change, because actions come from leadership. Leadership comes from the very top, and then it filters down, because you are a mirror image of your boss. If you're my boss, yes, I am my own person, but I take on board how you carry yourself within the environment that you're employing me to be in. And then the person beneath me does the same thing, because one, they don't want to step out of line, and two, you are the person that they go off. And then it goes to the players. And Ten Hag has to sort of almost eradicate top and bottom. Yes, it's easier to work on the players because you see them all the time, and they don't fundamentally. Yes, they fundamentally can get you sacked, but ultimately it's the people above you that get you fired, like James has said. And until that changes, mate, I don't see any difference. So
Yeah,
I echo everything that James said.
no, definitely. John, just want to get your take on it as well. Cheers for that, Ben. Yeah, I'm sure again you fully behind what James and Ben have said there, really. But just want to get your take on it as well, mate.
Yeah, well, I completely agree with the points made, and James made the point. The Glazers, when they came in 2005, I mean, I think if they won't be allowed to buy a club today the way they bought our club in 05. And I personally think the crack started before Fergie even retired. I mean, we remember we sold Ronaldo, didn't we, in 09, and we replaced him with Antonio Valencia and St. Michael Bowen, didn't we? You know, and then it really came to a head, I think, in the 11-12 season, because we lost the league on goal difference. And when I remember Martin Samuel, obviously very good writer of the Mail, he wrote at the time, if you have Ronaldo in your team, you don't lose sides on goal difference, do you? You know, and I just think it started then, and obviously 2013 was a reaction to how we lost it the year before. So for me, the cracks were already starting to occur during Fergie, even though we kept winning titles. I do think, I don't think a lot will change until the days are gone. I mean, we spoke about progress and all that. I don't think you'll really see true progress until, you know, them lot are gone. And I was speaking to my best friend who I watched the game with yesterday. He's like, what's one thing you hope for this season? What's a good season? And I said, oh, maybe top four, maybe win a trophy and all that. But then I thought, well, with all the talks going on at the moment, sure, it has to be the Glazers going, doesn't it? You know, really. But hopefully it does occur. And I do get the sense their time will probably be coming to an end soon. And hopefully it won't be too long. But we just, like James said, you got to keep the pressure on. You got to keep shouting Glazers out. And, hopefully it'll lead to their departure before too long.
Yeah, hopefully so. We can only cross his fingers and hope at this stage. And obviously, I know there's still protests going on and potentially more to come. So hopefully that, you know, does have a bit of an impact. I know there's been it's been quiet lately, obviously due to the, you know, lack of games that we've had, and hopefully we keep on with that message this season. But just moving on very quickly, guys, onto the final topic, which was mine really, and it was a really brief one because I didn't want to labour the point too much, and we're getting close to the hour anyway. Been some really good points tonight, and some good topics. But it was just a Ronaldo one, very briefly. I think we touched on it early on in one of the topics early on in the hour. But obviously, it was just really from what Keane had said in terms of, obviously, at this point in time now we're making a bit of a mockery really of Ronaldo's career, that there was an opportunity for him to leave in the summer, and he probably should have done. I don't necessarily think that's particularly fair. I think, in my view, I think, you know, it was quite mutual that Ronaldo should have understood where we were as a club towards the back of the last season, and Ten Hag had a bit of a mission to turn the club around, turn the team around, and get a team's performance. But obviously, we've still got an opportunity to use one of the greatest goal scorers of all time. And I think, you know, the Man City game at 4-0 at half time, was it the right decision to even ring Martial, never mind Ronaldo? Probably not. You know, do you just risk an injury to either one of those two players if you bring them on? And obviously, Martial had a good sort of cameo role when he came on and managed to get a couple of goals. But I think, you know, would it have been right to bring a 37, 38-year-old Ronaldo on in that sort of environment when it was quite a tough, embarrassing situation at the Etihad? Probably not. I see his reasoning, but I think it's bigger than that, isn't it? I think Ronaldo knows that he's going to, the amount of time he's going to feature this season is going to probably be quite reduced. Obviously, we've got the Europa League games, but does Ronaldo really want to be playing in those games week in, week out? Not until he probably gets to the latter end of that competition, if we do get obviously into the final stages. But for me, it's getting pretty embarrassing now, and it's a shame to see, because it's like watching you kind of favourite, I don't know, watching your pub burn down. And we've had some weird analogies tonight, haven't we? But that's going to be another one. I think we can tweet all these out later on today and list them all. But yeah, it's like watching your favourite pub kind of like fall to the ground, and it's just one of those sad situations where watching him on the sidelines, obviously quite upset, and you know, he just wants to be out there helping the team, no matter kind of what situation he's currently in with his fitness or his age or whatever else of his form. It's just so sad to see, and I noticed it must have been Ben put a tweet out earlier on. There possibly been some breaking news that Ten Hag will be open to let Ronaldo go after the World Cup, which probably doesn't come as a surprise, guys, does it really? To be quite honest, I think that the time's come where if the opportunity comes where Ronaldo can leave in January, he probably will do, won't he? John, I'll just come to you first, and then we'll come to James and finish upon Ben. But what's your general feelings on Ronaldo now? And is it getting kind of sad now towards the end that it's got to this stage?
Well, my opinion on it's quite hard to say because he is 37. I think maybe there is an element where, you know, when you see him on the pitch, he does look someone that it looks past his best. I still think he might be able to contribute some goals for us this season potentially. Yeah, he might have some kind of role. I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether he leaves in January. I think one of the reasons why I didn't go this summer was I wasn't a club a real major club that were really in for him, and I think that's unfortunately a sad tale for him. I think it's a tough one because it wouldn't have made any difference to the result yesterday. Maybe bringing Martial on, you know, him getting the 2 goals, Ronaldo might not have got those 2 goals. So, yeah, well you say it was an embarrassment yesterday, but at least it gives Martial a big confidence in that. So I think that's probably one thing that he did get right yesterday. But, yeah, I mean, people bringing up Ronaldo, and I don't think it's really necessarily a conversation we should be having about yesterday because it made no difference whatsoever. And but yeah, I think he will get his chance, though. I think it's mainly because he hasn't played a full pre-season and that, and I think it'll be a big decision January potentially if there's a club in for him. But yeah, it does feel like the beginning of the end. And you know, speaking about the process with Ten Hag trying to rebuild the team, although Ronaldo's not going to be here after the summer, I don't think so. Yeah, we maybe should have bitten the bullet and sold him this summer, but he's here and hopefully can contribute.
Yeah, I hope so too. Really, I mean that is, you know, I think he's still got something to give personally, but it's you know, it's just the situation with Ten Hag. As he kind of got to a point where it's kind of, you know, he's kind of ruined that and tarnished that relationship. I'm not sure. I mean, you see clips in training where they seem to be getting on, and in comments in interviews where he seems to be sort of like singing his praises, but it tells a different tale when we're coming to sort of games and matches. But James, what's your general feelings on it? I know it's almost like a done thing, isn't it, with Ronaldo now? We should be moving on from it and thinking about the bigger picture, but he's still here and he's still a legend of the club. So, you know, it's sad for me, it's kind of a bit of a sad affair, but I don't know what's your feelings on it, mate?
Yeah, I kind of want to touch on something that John said towards the end, actually, and it's like it's not really something that we should be discussing. Like, I think a lot's gone on in Cristiano Ronaldo's private life that we're not privy to that information, and we're just discussing Ronaldo because Ronaldo gets clicks. That's probably why Keane brought up about the treatment of Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo is big news whenever you speak about him. Was he relevant in yesterday's defeat? No. Is he relevant in United's performances this season? Not really. He's clearly not in Ten Hag's plans. I think we're looking into it far too much. The reason that Martial came on and Ronaldo didn't is because Martial is in Ten Hag's plans and Ronaldo isn't. And it was more important for Martial to get minutes than Cristiano Ronaldo because he's going to get more minutes for the rest of the season. So I think we're looking at it like, oh, it's so much disrespect. And And I can kind of see that maybe because Ronaldo is the consummate professional. He wants to play all the time. I think he's a bit like Wayne Rooney in that regard, where he's like itching to play, itching to be on the pitch. He probably looks at the club that he loves at 4-0 down and thinks, I want to be out there, I can do something. But at the end of the day, if the manager doesn't really see you as part of the plans, then maybe he should have moved on in the summer and maybe he should move in January. But again, coming back to the whole Glazers thing, if you give people ridiculous wages, you find it harder to move players on. And if Cristiano Ronaldo is on the best part of 500 grand a week, then outside of maybe the MLS or going away Asia somewhere or Saudi, where's he going to pick up those kind of wages? Because there's not many big teams in Europe in the Champions League that are going to pay that. So I think we're talking about it because it's Cristiano Ronaldo. If it was just another squad player that had been left out and he wasn't part of the plans, we wouldn't be speaking about him. He's a big click, so he's going to draw attention. But I don't really want to speak anymore about Ronaldo. He's a legend of the football club. He's a legend of the game. Obviously, he's broken all kinds of goal records. He deserves respect. He deserves some privacy as well. And yeah, good luck to him. But unfortunately, he's not in the plans for this season.
No, I totally agree. I think the reason, I kind of brought it up really was more just to kind of get to the point where I think it was evident not only with the performance in terms of where we are with City, but in terms of the kind of forward plans for him. And I think it's got to the point now where it's, for me, I kind of wish that it just kind of materialised and it moved on in summer. When it was evident that you stayed, it wasn't great for anybody. And it's got to this point now, and you could see the writing on the wall for me. And unfortunately, we're kind of in that reality where I knew it was going to be in terms of seeing Ronaldo sat on the bench and obviously clearly unhappy, which is obvious when Ten Hag trying to build a team around lots of other people rather than just run it one man. So fair point, James. Ben, just your final thoughts on it. I appreciate you probably in a similar point of view as the other two lads here, but it's
yeah. I mean, for me, Reece, I look at Ronaldo. For me, there's three things you can when it comes to Ronaldo. One, his deal encapsulates what's been wrong with the club. Nothing against the player, but the deal in itself should never have been done in the first place because it's not what we need for the future. I get why, obviously, Woodward did it, but that was wrong from the starters. Number two, Ten Hag's well within his rights to do what he thinks best for the team because he's got to look at what he does now impacts the future. So Ronaldo's not going to be here in the future. Age comes to us all, and that's just a fact. So because he's chosen to take that, what you'd consider to be the more long-term view in the now, it's going to draw attention because, like James said, who it is. I think what Roy said's grossly unfair on the manager because you're then, on one hand, you're saying you want to give the manager time and allow him to do what he wants with his team, but then in the next breath, you're then in effect criticising him for not playing somebody when he's got his reasons, which Roy's not privy to. Roy's not the manager, and ultimately it's on Ten Hag's head. I personally think that he should have gone in the summer. I think it was clearly obvious that he understood that Ten Hag wasn't going to play him, which is fine. At the end of the day, I've got no doubt Ten Hag was 100% transparent with him about that. But then you then facilitate the move for the player, or you do your utmost to allow him to go. To then, one, give the player what he wants, and then two, you remove that cloud that can be constantly brought out to put over the manager's head at any point the media want to create a narrative. Because like James said, he'll get you the most clicks in one single tweet because of who he is. I think going after the World Cup would be great for both parties because I've got no doubt Ten Hag probably wants to bring somebody in the January transfer window if he possibly could. So you remove Cristiano, not because I don't like the player, I love the player, but you remove that, the wages you're going to save, and obviously gives him a chance to bring somebody in who he sees as a future component for the football club. And I think the problem is you got, Reece, is people make so much out of nothing just because of who it is, and that's the problem. You know what I mean? You could have a sound, objective discussion about Ronaldo, but people won't. They get too personal about it. Like Ten Hag's got this vendetta against him. He hasn't. He's just seen what he wants to do best for the football club. I mean, some of the stuff that Ronaldo's had to deal with personally, I don't know how he still came to play football during parts of the season with what happened to him in his personal life. And again, I think that's what people forget as well. They look at Ronaldo because it draws attention, but they then think, well, hang on a minute, how would I have been in that situation? I'd have wanted at least 2 weeks off work if I'd have gone through what his wife's gone through.
Yeah.
But he chose to come back to the football club, but then we still pillage him and the manager in the same breath. Do you know what I mean? So no, I just think we just need to move on. What will happen will happen, and all the best to him. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Well, we move on, guys. We've just gone over the hour, and we move on. So the next game we've got is on Thursday. We've got Ammonia away in Europa League. I mean, just general feelings and thoughts on kind of how we bounce back from that, guys. I'm assuming we're all expecting a decent result out of that game and a decent performance. Are we, John? What's your general feelings on that? We're going to get a good result in that game.
Yeah, I think I would expect us to win that game. Obviously, I do have confidence that we can bounce back from yesterday, and like I say, hopefully Martial getting a couple of goals will boost. I do think Ronaldo will probably play on Thursday as well, and I would expect us to bounce back and win. And then obviously we got Everton Sunday night. Hopefully we can win there. But yeah, I do think we'll probably win something like maybe 3-0 or 4-0 or something like that. So yeah, I would expect us to win.
Yeah, potentially it's a confidence boost, isn't it? James, do you agree? You reckon a good result on Thursday will probably get us back up to that level again and turn things around?
Yeah, I think it's important for squad morale, isn't it? I think it's going to be interesting to see which starting 11 he picks, because we're playing Thursday, Sunday football for the next few weeks. So he's really going to have to utilise his squad. So whether people like Shaw, Casemiro, Ronaldo, Martial, whether they come in, I guess Lindelof will start, even though Varane's injury apparently isn't as bad as suspected. So he may travel, he may not. I'd personally wrap him in cotton wool if I was Ten Hag, especially for this game. But selection will be important. It'll be very interesting, but I am expecting us to get a win. Yeah, nice little confidence, couple of goal win, I think.
Yeah, hopefully. And Ben, you agree? Do you reckon it'll be fairly comfortable?
I think we'll win, mate. I think we'll win, and I actually think we'll see a bounce back in terms of the application and the attitude, because I think what the manager's been able to instill in the short period of time he's been in charge, from an attitude and application standpoint, in terms of after the next game, like we saw with the Brentford thing, I'm positive. I think he'll bring players in like John and James have said. Casemiro, I think, will probably start. Lindelof will probably get a game. We might even see Dubravka, because he's not really what you consider to be tier one sort of opposition. No disrespect to them, but he's, you brought him in for a reason. It'll be a good game to see what he can do. Takes a bit of the heat off De Gea from obviously yesterday's performance as a collective. And yeah, I expect to see Ronaldo start and get a good result.
I do think also it'll probably, some of the players I'll play on Sunday because of the short change up. I think some of them will remain back in England, and they'll give some of the fringe players a go. Wouldn't surprise me if someone like Elanga got a game as well.
Yeah, it's a tough month, isn't it? We've rounded off with what looks like Spurs and possibly Chelsea towards the end of the month, if that's confirmed. But it's a tough month, really. Obviously, Newcastle can cause us a bit of an upset. It depends what Newcastle turn up, but if that Newcastle play against City that day, then we're in for a game as well. So there's no easy fixtures now between now and the end of the month, really. So it's we need some confidence back, don't we? Well, I appreciate it, guys. It's been a good hour and 10-15 minutes. So yeah, it's some really, really good topics, and thanks to everybody that's been watching and commenting as well. So thanks to John, James, and Ben, and don't forget to follow them on Twitter as well. They're all their handles. Well, James, yours is not, but yours will be soon. I'm sure you'll be on a show with me again shortly. So don't forget to follow the guys on Twitter if you know of everybody around, and catch you on the next one. I think we'll be doing a preview show. I'm not sure if Ben, you're involved with that, but we usually do a preview show on a Wednesday, so probably for the Thursday game. So we'll maybe catch some of the guys on the panel on Wednesday, and then we'll be doing Sunday show as well at the end of the week, just to kind of round off the week. So don't forget to catch the guys on that. John, do you want to plug the women's channel as well?
Yes, I don't know when next show is. We did do a review of Saturday's game a couple of hours ago, and usually we have a show on a Friday night as well. So, but is it internationals, and England are playing USA at Wembley as well. USA the world champions at the moment. Obviously, England the Euros champions, so that'll be on TV. So yeah, if you want to watch it, it's there on Friday night. Maybe
a decent England performance for once, at least for a few weeks we've seen. So, no, brilliant. Well, cheers, guys, and we'll catch you in the next one. See you later.